position throughout an industry that is not only fascinating, but is vitally essential to the health and welfare of our daily lives. In a sense, it involves two great stories, one concerning a necessity that dates back to mankind's earliest history, the substance called bread, which for centuries has been known as the staff of life. And with it, the tremendous success story of the organization that has become recognized as the epitome of superlative quality, not only producing the world's finest bread, but in all types of bakery products. The Langendorf United Bakeries, one of whose spotless new plants is the subject of our telecast tonight. An inspiring personal as well as industrial success story of an idea conceived and developed. It is our privilege to meet in person later during tonight's success story. Bread, how closely it relates to human history since the beginning. How many thousands of generations have depended upon it for sustenance? How has it found its way into song and verse? In the 11th century, the great poet-mathematician Omar Khayyam eulogized it in his timeless Rubaiyat, a loaf of bread, and thou beside me singing in the wilderness. Yet 30 centuries before that, in 2000 B.C., the Egyptians were making bread, and surprisingly, their crude methods followed many of the basic principles perfected and in use today. And all over the civilized earth, in our modern times, the sacrament of bread and wine from the Last Supper is given at Holy Communion to worshipers. So that bread has played its part, not only in our bodily needs, but in our legend, even in some of our beloved American music. Certainly the influence of bread is shown in some of those most familiar art forms. Thousands of homes still treasure a copy of Jean-François Millet's painting, The Gleaners, who in their toil depict the reverence for wheat as the essential for their daily bread. Thus in song, in story, in art, in history, and even in prayer, when we ask for our daily bread, this staff of life is before us. And so our success story tonight is of bread, 1954, and of the great company Langendorf United Bakeries that has brought it to modern perfection. And with bread, a treasury of delicious, always fresh bakery products that are as familiar on our grocer's shelves and in our homes as our breakfast, lunch, and dinner in which they play so important a part. Where does tonight's story of Langendorf bread have its beginning? It begins with wheat, the finest wheat obtainable to meet Langendorf standards. Actually, two selected types of wheat are milled to make the perfect blend required for Langendorf white bread. One is known to the trade as blue stem wheat, a soft wheat from which exceedingly fine textured flour is obtained. The other is called high-protein Montana wheat, a sturdy, nutritious grain, providing the essential balance for the blend of flour. Arriving at Langendorf Bakery, the sacks of flour, as many as 20,000 of them, are allowed to age or mature for approximately 30 days before use. This has a beneficial effect on the enzymes in flour, which must be exactly correct in balance to produce the world's finest bread. When the flours are correctly aged or matured, they are then thoroughly aerated in this blending machine. In the blending process, every particle of the two types of flour blend to exact proportions, and the blend is then moved under pneumatic pressure through stainless steel tubes to the ingenious sifter. Here, the flour is sifted in a process that makes the old-fashioned home flour sifter seem antique. Within this sifter are 5 separate, extremely fine nylon screens. The mesh on these screens is so tiny that a drop of water has difficulty penetrating it, for there are 2,500 perforations for every square inch of these screens. It is minute and thorough sifting that produces the finest flour and resulting finer textures of Langendorf bread. After this thorough quality control, the flour proceeds to these 3 great giant storage bins. Each series of bins contains a total of 90,000 pounds of flour, or enough overall to produce 150,000 loaves of bread. From here it proceeds to the first actual processing into dough. But now one of our success story cameras takes us to our reporter, Bob Day, who is with Mr. Virgil McQuillan, General Production Manager of all Langendorf plants, to take us through the next processes.
Mr. McQuillan, we know that the making of bread used to be a task that took a whole day out of a housewife's week. But a story we'd like to find out. As I recall, these are the main ingredients of a loaf of bread: flour, water, shortening, and yeast. Will you tell us how you go about combining those ingredients to make a loaf of Langendorf?
Yes, Bob, gladly. You'll notice the tubes above. The flour is conveyed from the flour storage bins in the flour room by compressed air through these stainless steel tubes. And it's discharged in this flour hopper, which you will notice there's a scale attached.
Is this the scale here?
That's right. Now, the operator adjusts the scale for the amount of flour that's required for the individual dough batch. Then he turns to the control panel. As you will notice, we have 3 places on here. In other words, that's 3 storage bins, each one having a different type of flour.
And he selects them here?
He selects them here, presses the button, the flour is weighed off automatically.
All right, that takes care of the flour. Now, what about the water?
Now, the water goes through this water meter. He adjusts it for the pounds he needs for the individual dough again, due to the amount of varieties we make. Adjust it for the amount, press the button, and it flows through the meter into the mixer.
Well, as I recall, in making bread, you had to be very careful of the temperature of the water.
That's right. Over here, we have what we call a tempering tank. You'll notice we have 3 valves, 1 hot, cold, and city water, with a thermometer in the middle. Now, the operator will adjust the water for the right temperature before it goes through the meter into the mixer.
All right, we've got flour, water. How about the shortening?
Shortening, we have a shortening right next to the water meter. He adjusts the scale or the meter for the amount of shortening required for this dough batch that we're going to mix. Press the button, and that's flowed into the mixer automatically.
And finally, our yeast.
That's right. We have a machine here that dissolves the yeast. We think in the Langendorf Bakeries we get better results, a more uniform loaf of bread, and a better loaf of bread by dissolving the yeast.
And now that we've got all these ingredients together in the mixer, what happens inside there?
Then you will notice we have a clock as well as a thermometer on the face of this mixer. We adjust the clock for the right mixing time. We've got the right temperature on our water so that the final results will have a sponge at just the temperature that's desired.
A sponge?
That's right. Now, the reason I call it a sponge, Bob, it will resemble a sponge after the 4.5-hour fermentation period.
Is that what it's entering now?
That's right. This is what we call our fermentation room. And I might add, there's only 2 like this out west, and we have them both in our Langendorf Bakeries. The most modern fermentation rooms made today.
Well, you know, it looks to me as though the process hasn't changed a great deal, just the method of doing it. The measuring is just as careful, the ingredients are just as finer. Now, here comes a batch of dough out of the fermentation room. What happens to it?
Now, we have to take it back into this mixer and add the rest of the ingredients to make the final dough.
And when it's been mixed there, what happens?
Then we're ready to scale it off into loaves of dough. Now, you'll notice I say dough, Bob, not bread, because it isn't bread until it's baked. So I'm going to use that term.
All right. How many different types of bread are made here at Langendorf?
Well, over 12 varieties.
And here we are. Looks like our dough is taking another aerial trip here. Is this another mixing process now?
No, this is what we call a trough elevator. Now, the dough will be discharged in the hopper above the scaling machine. And that's what you're looking at now.
And as it comes down through the machine, what happens to it?
We weigh it off 6 loaves at a time. And this machine has a capacity of 120 loaves a minute.
Well, now, I know that all loaves of bread aren't the same size. How do you control that?
With this handle on top, you see the man adjusting now. It has a variable speed as well as adjustments for weight.
And those are the rough potential loaves that we see coming out on the conveyor belt beneath.
Yes, that's right.
All right, now they're moving up that conveyor belt into a sort of a whirligig machine up here. What's happening to them there?
Well, that's called a rounder. Now, when the dough leaves the divider, it's very sticky. And through this rounder, we put a thin skin on the outside of the dough piece so that we're able to handle it. It won't be sticky.
And from there, is it ready to bake now?
No, from there we must put it in, must let it have a resting period of 12 minutes.
And that takes place up above here in these cabinets that we see.
That's right. This is what we call an overhead proofer. Travels back and forth at room temperature for 12 minutes to give the yeast a chance to form the gas inside of the skin.
What's the next step after that?
The next step is molding.
And while we move to the area where the mold is situated, let's call on our success story narrator, Hartley Sater, to cover for us until we arrive.
You are viewing Success Story, an on-the-spot live telecast brought to you each week as a public service by Richfield, makers of Rich Lube HD motor oil and Richfield gasoline. Tonight's success story originates in one of the Langendorf Pacific Coast plants. Now we return to our reporter, Bob Day, and Virgil McQuillan, General Production Manager, as they continue the discussion of how Langendorf bread is made.
And now the dough has had that 12-minute rest. What's happening to it here, Mr. McQuillan?
Now it's discharged onto a conveyor that leads into the molder. And
This is actually the molding machine here in front
that's right. That's a machine that does the work that our mothers used to do by hand.
And a hard job it was, too, if I recall.
Oh, I should say so.
Let's move in close and see what's happening to those round balls of bread dough as they come down through this molder. Will you describe what we're seeing?
Now you will notice we have 3 sets of rolls here. We flatten the dough piece out in a pancake shape. From there we mold it up by this curling mat, as we call it, on the molder.
This is the curling mat here to the right.
That shapes it. Then we finish the process with this flattening board here.
Well, you know, I can see what's coming out at the end there, and our viewers are going to see it, and it doesn't look a bit like a loaf of bread to me.
No, it doesn't yet, Bob. That's right. It's smaller. But from here, it goes in the final proof box.
Another rest period?
That's right. That's what we call the second rest period. Now, this room is thermostatically controlled for heat as well as humidity.
And to give us a look at this great bread proofing room, let's call once again on our success story narrator, Hartley Saber.
You are viewing one of the most modern pieces of bakery equipment in the United States, called a final proofing room, which allows the shaped loaves of bread to rise in pans under humidity and temperature control. In approximately 1 hour and 25 minutes, the loaves rise to their proper size. The temperature inside the room is thermostatically controlled to an even 105 degrees in a relative humidity of 98 degrees. Now back to Bob Day. Ready now to rejoin Bob Day and Virgil McQuillan for an interesting interruption in the story of Langendorf bread to discuss the making of Langendorf rolls.
Well, Mr. McQuillan, now here's the bread product. Up to now we've been following loaves of bread, but here are rolls, and as I understand it, we can see almost the whole process in this very small area right here.
That's right. This is one of the most modern makeup equipment for rolls. Has a capacity of 28,800 rolls per hour.
Boy, that would fill a lot of hamburgers.
Yes, well, it takes a lot, this type of hamburger, you know.
I guess it does. Let's move over here to the beginning and follow the process of the dough right through this machine. Will you tell us what's going on here?
You're looking at the dough hopper, the same as the bread divider hopper of making bread. And below that, we have a scaling device and a rounder, the same as making bread, only on a smaller scale.
Yes, it's a good deal smaller scale. We can see that from here.
Yes, then from there, it travels in the overhead proofer, same as bread.
Now, wait a minute. That's a much smaller proofer.
Yes, but we're handling a much smaller piece of dough, Bob.
And so it doesn't need as long a rest.
That's right, yes.
All right, it's through the proofer, and it seems to be dropping into things that look almost like, well, they look like little egg trays almost.
That's right. That's how we convey the piece of dough through this proofer. And from there, it's discharged into the molder.
Is this molder similar to the one that we saw molding the bread?
Yes, a little different principle, but the same, really. Now, these are hamburger rolls that you're seeing being made now. You will notice, Bob, all through the operation, we have not touched the product by hand. On the bread as well as the rolls.
That's true. Now, you say this machine will also make hot dog rolls by a very simple adjustment.
That's all, yes.
I think that's
Make either one. By the way, Bob, I'd like for you to meet our shop superintendent, Mr. Hans Spath.
All right, if you'll excuse me a minute, we'll take the viewers over and say hello to him. Hans, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. How long have you been with Langendorf?
26 years.
You certainly must know all there is to know about baking good things to eat.
Supposed to.
I'm sure you do. Thanks for talking to us for a moment, Hans. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I think our visit to this Langendorf plant tonight goes back to the story of bread making and to a view of one of the greatest and most modern baking ovens in the world. And while we move over to this oven, Mr. McQuillan, let me say that one could easily mistake this for a beautiful ballroom were it not for the mechanical equipment around. I've never seen more beautiful inlaid hardwood floors.
Well, there isn't a ballroom in the country that has any better floors than we have, Bob, as you've noticed.
Is that a normal thing in a bakery?
No, it is not. However, it is in our Langendorf Bakeries.
I see.
I'll say that.
Tell me something about the bread that we're seeing here. What type of loaf is this?
This is our large white round top loaf.
Now, are these the same small little round pieces of dough that we saw being put in the pans before?
Yes, that same piece of dough. However, it was much smaller than that.
Fills them up now.
Oh, yes. After it travels through the proof box, it's allowed to rest and rise to proper height, like it is right now.
All right, let's watch that dough on its trip into the oven itself, where it's going to become a beautiful golden loaf of Langendorf bread. How far will they travel through that oven?
120 feet.
About how long will it take them?
Well, that varies, Bob, with the different varieties.
How hot is it in there? Let's get all the statistics
Well, approximately 450 degrees.
And we're going to see them in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, coming out of the other end. But while Mr. McQuillan and I walk these some 120 feet to the discharge end of this oven, let's call on Hartley Tato again to give you a word picture of what's going on there.
And here they come. Piping hot, golden brown Langendorf loaves on parade. And ladies and gentlemen, if it were just possible to transmit to you the delectable aroma that accompanies these perfectly baked loaves as they emerge from the oven, television would have a new and delightful dimension indeed. The freshness that you see in these tempting, appetizing, smooth-textured loaves is the same that is maintained from here to the grocer's shelves, supporting the slogan that identifies Langendorf bread everywhere as America's finest. Now let's have Bob Day and Virgil McQuillan take us through the mechanical steps that govern the course of the loaves as they go from here to the slicing and wrapping machine.
It's hard to see the bread up there.
Well, Mr. McQuillan, here they come out and ranks just like the best drilled soldiers you ever saw, and by golly, if their uniforms aren't exactly the same, just like soldiers would be.
Yeah, that's right, Bob. Well, that's the finest oven that we can buy today. You'll notice the uniform color on every loaf.
Yes, sir, that's right. Uniform color, shape, and may I say the aroma is just delicious at about this point.
Well, that's Langendorf bread.
How fast are they coming out of that oven? How fast is it actually producing baked loaves?
Approximately 100 loaves a minute. And you will notice they will slide down on this automatic depanner that you see working here now. They're depanned onto the cooler trays, which is very difficult to see due to the fact they're underneath.
Now we watch them. They take a somersault here, and then disappear from sight, and you say they're going into the cooler trays.
Right into the cooler tray.
Well, now, where do you store all that bread for the cooling? I mean, there must be a tremendous volume of bread. Where does it go?
Well, then it goes up here. It travels up to this point here, back and forth for approximately 800 feet for 75 to 80 minutes to cool.
And when it comes out, it's ready for wrapping and slicing.
That is right, yes.
And here we see it coming out of the cooling area. None at the moment, but there have been a regular string of golden loaves, and there are a group of them now. Let's watch and see how this bread is sliced and wrapped, because the slicing of bread has been the bane of the existence of many a fine carver. To get neat, smooth, even slices, and yet here they are, just as fast and just as neat as you could please. Tell us a little bit about the slicing device, Mr. McQuillan.
Well, this slicing machine here, it's in bandsaw blades. It has a capacity of 70 loaves a minute. And we're running 70 loaves a minute right now, by the way.
Is the width of the slice adjustable?
It's adjustable for any thickness we might want.
And the wrapping and slicing operations seem to be one continuous thing.
That's true. It goes from the slicer directly into the wrapping machine.
Once again, a very fine sample of efficiency in the producing of this fine bread. I noticed, Mr. McQuillan, that we have some other guests here aside from our Richfield Success Story crew. Would you tell me what's going on over here at the far corner?
I'd like you to meet Mr. O'Connor.
All right, thank you, Mr. McQuillan. I'll go over and say hello to Mr. O'Connor. I've already met him once, and I'm going to call him Bill. Hi, Bill. What are you doing
Well,
here?
hiya, Bob. Well, I've just taken these good-looking boys to the bakery, Bob.
Well, they certainly look like they're enjoying it. Bill, how many tours a year do you take to the bakery?
Well, I take about 10,000 a year.
How long have you been with the Langendorf family?
33 years.
That's a long time to work in one place. You must like your job.
I sure do.
I bet you like this part of it best of all.
I like it very much.
Bill, tell me, there's one thing I'm very curious about. What's the most ordinary, what's the question you're most often asked when you're taking a tour through the factory?
Well, they want to know how they marvel at the cleanliness of the building and the wonderful modern baking ideas that we have today without touching it by hand.
Yes, we've seen that all the way through.
Fine.
And these boys, I'm sure, have enjoyed their tour just as much as we have.
Yes, boy, they have. They certainly have.
Fine. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, while I move on to what must be the highlight of this evening's success story, let's call once again on our narrator, Hartley Tato.
What Bob is leading us to now is truly a great highlight. For if we've been impressed with the industrial success story inherent in what we've seen tonight, the personal success story of the man whose faith, vision, and devotion to a public service developed these Langendorf United Bakeries is equally impressive. It is our privilege now to present our distinguished guest for the evening, Mr. Stanley S. Langendorf, President of Langendorf United Bakeries, Incorporated.
Mr. Langendorf, we understand that the baking industry has expanded tremendously in the past few years, and this success story of the Langendorf United Bakeries, as we're seeing it here tonight, is certainly indicative of your confidence in an even brighter future for your company. In what place among the food industries does the baking industry rank?
Bob, the baking industry among all, including steel and automotive manufacturing, is the sixth largest in the nation and the second largest of all food industries. There are $5 billion worth of bakery products sold annually. And I don't mean 5 million.
Well, sir, since you envision a tremendous success story for the baking industry, do you, in the face of all the talk of recession and depression, do you also see an economic success story in store for American industry and labor?
Yes, Bob. The population of the United States at the present time is 160 million and shows a constant growth of approximately 2.5 million people a year. The forecasts are that by 1960, only 6 years hence, it will have reached 175 million. And by 1970, our population will exceed 200 million. This means more bread eaters and more food consumption of every kind. It also means more homes, furnishings, home appliances, automobiles, gasoline, television sets, radios, clothing, and thousands of other things that the people in our modern age require.
From what you've said, sir, it sounds as though you have almost unbounded confidence in the future.
I certainly have. I have every confidence that America will progress in the next half century as it has in the first, and even to a greater and accelerated extent. There is no problem that the American people cannot solve.
Mr. Langendorf, can you tell us a little bit about your research laboratory and production control as they relate to Langendorf products?
Our company has both a testing and research laboratory, which is one of the most modern and complete in the West. Every ingredient, every carload of flour is analyzed and tested before using. To see that it meets our specifications for the very highest quality, our research laboratory is constantly on the alert for new developments and discoveries for improvements to give the public better quality, flavor, greater nutrition, and longer-lasting freshness.
Seems to me with the many products that you put out, you must meet some terrific engineering problems.
We do, Bob. Our engineering and production staff is constantly on the alert to find new methods for better production under the most sanitary conditions, such as you have observed here this evening.
In the past decade, we know that Langendorf United Bakeries have expanded tremendously. Can you give us any of the reasons behind this growth?
Bob, there is no secret to success. First of all, it is necessary to win the public confidence by giving consistent top quality and to ensure consumers maximum satisfaction, to keep them coming back for more. The best advertising is consumers' praise. Our company has instituted a personal training and development course which has been enthusiastically received by all the members of our organization. This course is intended to develop each individual to equip him to render better service to the public.
That reminds me of another question, Mr. Langendorf. The Langendorf employee family must be a tremendously large one. How many people are there in it?
There are more than 3,200. It is very gratifying to know that all the employees of the Langendorf organization are a very loyal and happy family, and the success of our company can be attributed in a large measure to their loyal and conscientious cooperation. I hope you, the television audience, have enjoyed this tour through our baking plant, and I want to thank the many thousands of customers who have made the Langendorf success story possible.
Thank you, Mr. Langendorf, for this wonderful opportunity to see your magnificent plant and to visit with you. There's one more important stop on tonight's fascinating behind-the-scenes tour of this Langendorf bakery. This is the link that connects the retail grocer and ultimately our own homes with the product we followed. To discuss this phase, we return to Bob Day, who is with Mr. George Blodgett, one of Langendorf's regional managers.
Mr. Blodgett, I know that this Langendorf bakery that we're televising tonight is only one of many Langendorf plants. How many are there in all?
Well, Bob, there are 20 modern Langendorf bakeries up and down the Pacific coast, with total annual sales in excess of $50 million and an annual payroll of over $16 million.
Now, it occurs to me that $50 million represents an awful lot of baked goods, and you must have a distribution problem. How do you make sure that you get them to the customer at the peak of their freshness?
Well, this distribution is made possible by the operation of over 1,400 bakery trucks, driven by courteous, friendly, and efficient route salesmen.
Now, let's have a look at the mechanics here. What part do these conveyors play in the operation?
Well, Bob, you remember that you followed the bread as it came out of the oven, then through the slicing and wrapping machines, and finally onto these conveyors. Well, these conveyors are so arranged that they pass immediately behind the bakery trucks, so that the bread can be transferred to these trucks with minimum handling. Every step in the baking process is directed toward placing Langendorf bread in the hands of the consumer at peak quality and freshness.
Well, now, it occurs to me, why do they use these trays, or pallets, I think you call them, in loading the route trucks? Wouldn't a big box hold more and be a lot faster?
Well, a box would hold more, but you must remember, Bob, that this bread is fresh out of the oven and wrapped while still warm. And to make certain that the consumer gets it in this perfect condition, it must be handled with the utmost care to ensure Mrs. Housewife that she is truly getting America's finest bread.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blodgett. Ladies and gentlemen, technical and mechanical achievements in themselves don't constitute a success story. Not without the vision, the faith, and the guidance of an idea and an individual behind them. In this story of Langendorf United Bakeries Incorporated and of Stanley S. Langendorf, we discover the essence of what makes this country and its system of free enterprise history's greatest success story. So long as we perpetuate that system of freedom of opportunity for all, just so long can we call America the land of the free.
Success Story, an on-the-spot live telecast, has come to you tonight from the world's most modern bakery, Langendorf. This is Hartley Sater saying good night from Richfield.